My parents made me their live-in nurse after Dad's stroke, then secretly signed the house over to my golden child brother while I was planning their anniversary party in it. So I gave them a party they'd never forget. I don't know if I'm looking for validation or advice, or maybe just a place to scream into the void where my family used to be. It's been 3 months since the anniversary party, as my former relatives now call it, and the dust hasn't exactly settled. It's more like it's coalesced into a permanent choking smog that I'm finally breathing free of, even if I cough a bit now and then. Let me start by saying I, Lena, 34F, was always the responsible one. While my younger brother Mark, 2 years my junior, was busy collecting participation trophies and charming his way out of trouble, I was collecting good grades, part-time jobs, and a debilitating sense of obligation. Our parents, bless their selectively blind hearts, always saw Mark's potential and my reliability. He was the sunshine. I was the sturdy, if somewhat boring, oak tree in the background. He got praise for breathing. I got a nod for building the entire fort. This dynamic became dangerously ingrained. Mark's screw-ups, from minor school infractions to more serious financial misadventures in his 20s, were always met with a sigh, a lecture, and then a bailout, often facilitated by yours truly. Lena, can you just lend Mark a little something? He'll pay you back. He never did. Lena, your brother's just finding his way. You're so sensible, you understand. I understood I was being used, but a part of me, the stupid, hopeful part, thought that one day they'd see. One day my efforts, my sacrifices would be truly valued. The real test, the one that set the stage for the final act, came 3 years ago when my father had a major stroke. He survived, thankfully, but it left him partially paralyzed and needing significant daily care. My mother, who had always been more of a general overseeing household operations than a hands-on participant, was immediately overwhelmed. Mark, predictably, was too busy with his startup, Reed, a vaguely defined app idea that mostly involved him playing video games and networking, to provide more than cursory weekend visits that usually ended with him borrowing $20 for gas. So, who stepped up? Good old reliable Lena. I was a mid-level project manager at the time, with a decent career trajectory. I had my own apartment, a social life, even a fledgling relationship. I gave it all up. Not at first, not entirely. I tried commuting, juggling, work and care. It nearly broke me. My long-term boyfriend, bless his heart, tried to be supportive, but the strain was too much. He pointed out gently at first, then more firmly, that my family was taking advantage of me, that Mark should be doing his share. I'd relay these concerns, and Mom would cry, saying, "How can you be so selfish, Cow Eru, when your father is like this? Mark's just not cut out for this kind of thing. It would break him." The implication was clear. I was cut out for it, and if I broke, well, that was just the cost of doing business as Lena. Eventually, I moved back into my childhood home. My company thankfully allowed me to go to part-time remote work, but it was a career dead end. My relationship fizzled out under the weight of constant family demands and my exhaustion. My savings, once earmarked for a down payment on my own place, started dwindling on retrofitting the house for Dad's needs. A ramp here, grab bars there, things insurance barely touched. Mom would sigh about the expenses, and I, like a fool, would dip into my funds saying, "Don't worry, Mom, I've got this." Mark, when present, would admire the improvements and say things like, "Wow, this is looking great, Lena. You're a lifesaver." Then he'd ask if he could borrow my car. For 3 years, I was a nurse, a cook, a cleaner, a physical therapist assistant, an emotional support animal for my increasingly demanding mother, and the family bookkeeper, all while trying to hold down a part-time job. My life shrank to the 4 walls of that house. Occasionally, a friend, usually my best friend Chloe, would try to drag me out, and I'd be met with guilt trips from Mom about leaving her alone with Dad, even if I'd arranged for a sitter. "What if something happens?" she'd wail. Chloe saw it all. "Lena," she'd say, her eyes full of concern, "they're draining you. This isn't sustainable." I knew she was right, but what was the alternative? Let my father suffer? The thing is, despite everything, I loved my parents. I clung to the hope that this sacrifice, this immense life-altering sacrifice, would finally make them see me, truly see me. I imagined a future where Dad was more recovered, Mark was finally, miraculously self-sufficient, and my parents would sit me down, tears in their eyes, and thank me. Maybe they'd even offer to help me get back on my feet, pay back some of the money I'd poured into their lives and their home. Foolish, I know. Then came the announcement of their 40th wedding anniversary. Mom decided, with a surprising burst of energy, that they absolutely had to have a big party. Not just any party, but a catered affair, at the house, with all their friends and extended family. Guess who was tasked with organizing it? Yep, me, while also caring for Dad, managing the household, and working my diminished job. "It'll be wonderful, Lena," Mom said, her eyes shining. "A real celebration of our life together, in our beautiful home. And you're so good at these things." Mark, when informed, said, "Awesome, a party. Just let me know what to wear." No offer to help, of course. Just an assumption that I would handle every single detail, from the invitations to the menu to the decorations. So I plunged into party planning. It was stressful, expensive. Guess who was fronting a lot of the initial costs with vague promises of reimbursement? But there was a tiny part of me that felt a flicker of that old hope. Maybe this party, this grand gesture I was orchestrating, would be the catalyst. Maybe, surrounded by friends and family, they would acknowledge what I'd done. The party was scheduled for a Saturday. On the Tuesday before, I was in Dad's old office, which had become a sort of family catch-all room, looking for a specific photo album Mom wanted for a display table. I was rummaging through a filing cabinet, one I hadn't really touched since before Dad's illness. Tucked in the back of a drawer under some old tax returns was a thick manila envelope. It wasn't dusty, which meant it was relatively new. Curious and thinking it might be something related to the party Mom had forgotten to tell me about, I opened it. Inside were legal documents. My heart started to pound even before I fully registered what I was looking at. There was a copy of a quitclaim deed and a letter from an attorney. The deed transferred full ownership of the house. Our house. The house I was currently breaking my back to maintain. The house I was planning their anniversary party in. From my parents, David and Susan Miller, to my brother, Mark Miller. It was dated just 6 weeks prior. I sank into Dad's old office chair, the papers trembling in my hands. My breath caught in my chest. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. 6 weeks. They had signed over the house, their most significant asset, the physical embodiment of our family history, to Mark. Secretly. While I was bathing my father, cooking their meals, managing their medications, putting my entire life on hold for them. I read further. The attorney's letter congratulated Mark on becoming a homeowner and outlined some tax implications. There were also notes handwritten by my mother, it looked like, on a separate piece of paper. Make sure Lena doesn't find out until after the party. Don't want to upset her. And another, more chilling one. Mark, darling, this will secure your future. Don't worry about your father and me. Lena will always take care of us. She's a good girl. A good girl. That's what I was to them. A permanent, unpaid, unthanked caregiver, now officially stripped of any potential inheritance or even recognition for turning their home into a safe haven for my father. They had, in essence, ensured Mark got the asset, while I got the lifelong responsibility. Something inside me didn't just snap, it shattered. It was like a pane of glass that had been spiderwebbed with tiny cracks for years, finally hit by a wrecking ball. The years of slights, the financial drains, the emotional neglect, the endless sacrifices, it all coalesced into this one, monumental betrayal. My grief was immediate and overwhelming, but beneath it, something new was stirring. A cold, hard rage I hadn't known I possessed. I sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. The documents spread out before me. My mind raced. All those times Mom had sighed about the cost of house repairs, knowing Mark would soon own it free and clear. All those times Mark had made token visits, probably already picturing himself as lord of the manor. All those times I'd reassured them, don't worry, I'll handle it. They hadn't worried. They knew I would. They were counting on it. The don't want to upset her line was particularly galling. They weren't worried about the morality of it, or the fairness, or my feelings beyond the immediate inconvenience of me being upset and potentially disrupting their plans, or their party. My first instinct was to confront them immediately, to scream, to rage, to throw the papers in their faces. But then a different thought, colder and more precise, began to form. They wanted a party, a celebration of their life and family. Oh, I'd give them one they would never, ever forget. Their concern was that I might be upset and spoil things. I realized they had no idea the depths to which they had finally pushed me. I carefully put the documents back in the envelope, tucked it into my purse, and went back to party planning. But now my efforts had a new, dark energy. I was meticulous. I confirmed the caterers, the florist, the small band Mom wanted. I bought a new dress, something elegant and understated. I helped Mom choose her outfit. I listened to her fret about seating charts and weather forecasts. All the while, a plan was solidifying in my mind. The next few days were surreal. I moved through them like an actress in a play, hitting my marks, saying my lines. I was polite, efficient, even outwardly cheerful. Mom commented several times on how calm I seemed. "You're handling everything so wonderfully, dear," she said, patting my arm. "I don't know what we'd do without you." The irony was a knife twisting. In my gut. If she only knew. I called Chloe and told her everything. She was silent for a long moment, then just breathed. "Oh, Lena, those absolute bastards." Her immediate, unvarnished fury was more comforting than any words of sympathy could have been. She asked what I was going to do. I told her my plan. She was quiet again, then said, "Good. Burn it all down. I'll be there. Front row, with metaphorical gasoline if you need it." Knowing I had her support, even if no one else in that house did, gave me a sliver of strength. Saturday arrived. The house looked beautiful. I had, if I may say so myself, done an incredible job. Flowers bloomed in artful arrangements. Soft lighting cast a warm glow. The caterers were setting up a lavish spread in the dining room. Guests started arriving around 6 p.m., friends of my parents, some distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. They all greeted me warmly, many of them commenting on how well Dad looked, how devoted I was. "Your parents are so lucky to have you, Lena," was a common refrain. Each compliment was another turn of the screw. Mark arrived fashionably late, all smiles and charm, dressed in an expensive new suit I suspected Mom had bought him. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Place looks amazing, sis. You outdid yourself." He then made a beeline for the bar. Mom was radiant. Dad was propped up in his favorite armchair, looking pleased and holding court as much as his condition allowed. Everything was perfect, just as they'd envisioned. Around 7:30, when most guests had arrived and had a drink or two, Mom clinked a spoon against her champagne flute. "Friends, family," she began, her voice beaming. "David and I are so thrilled you could all be here to celebrate 40 wonderful years together. It means the world to us." She gave a lovely sentimental speech about their journey, their love, their family. She even gave a little nod to Mark, our wonderful son who always brightens our lives, and then to me, and our darling Lena, who has been such a rock for us, especially these last few years. We couldn't manage without her. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I smiled, a perfectly serene, empty smile. Then it was Dad's turn. His speech was more halting, affected by the stroke, but heartfelt. He thanked everyone, echoed Mom's sentiments about their life together. He looked at me, and for a moment I saw a flicker of genuine warmth. "Lena, good girl," he managed and patted my hand. That phrase, "good girl," from the note echoed in my head. Then Mom said, "And now I believe Lena has a few words she'd like to say. A little toast she's prepared." This was it. All eyes turned to me. I picked up my own champagne flute. My hand was perfectly steady. I took a deep breath. "Thank you, Mom, Dad," I began, my voice clear and calm. The room quieted. 40 years is an incredible milestone, and it certainly deserves a celebration. And this house, our family home, has seen so many memories, hasn't it? I paused, looking around the room, making eye contact with a few of the guests. Then I turned my gaze to my parents and then to Mark, who was leaning against the mantelpiece, looking smug. It's seen Christmases and Easters, birthdays and graduations. It saw me grow up, learning to be responsible, to be reliable. It saw Mark grow up. Well, it saw Mark grow up too. A few polite titters. Mark smirked. "These last 3 years especially, this house has been my entire world," I continued, my voice still even. "Since Dad's stroke, I've dedicated myself to his care, to maintaining this home, to supporting Mom. I put my career on hold, my personal life on hold, used my savings for modifications and upkeep, all because family helps." "Family? Isn't that what we always say?" Mom was beaming. Dad nodded. Mark looked a little bored, probably wondering when he could get another drink. "I always believed that my sacrifices, my dedication would be recognized, that my love for this family, demonstrated day in and day out, was valued equally. I let that hang in the air for a moment. So you can imagine my surprise," I said, my voice dropping just a fraction, a hint of steel entering it, when, earlier this week, while looking for an old photo album for this very party, I stumbled upon some rather interesting legal documents. A stillness fell over the room. Mom's smile faltered. Mark straightened up. "It turns out," I went on, pulling the manila envelope from where I'd discreetly placed it on a side table, "that this beloved family home, the one I've poured my heart, soul, and finances into preserving, the one I'm currently hosting this lovely party in, isn't actually Mom and Dad's anymore." I opened the envelope and pulled out the copy of the quitclaim deed. As of 6 weeks ago, it belongs exclusively to Mark. There was a collective gasp. I saw Chloe in the corner, a tiny grim smile playing on her lips. My Aunt Carol's jaw dropped. Mom went pale. "Lena, this is not the time or place," she began, her voice shaky. "Oh, I think it's the perfect time and place," I said, my voice hardening. "A celebration of family, of openness, of honesty, or at least that's what I thought anniversaries were about. Silly me." I held up the deed. Signed, sealed, and delivered. "Congratulations, Mark, on your new acquisition. I trust you'll be able to manage the mortgage, the property taxes, the upkeep, and of course the full-time care of our parents, now that you're the man of the house." Mark was sputtering. "What? You're twisting things." "Am I?" I asked, then pulled out the handwritten note. "Perhaps this note from Mom will clarify things." It reads, and I quote, "Mark, darling, this will secure your future. Don't worry about your father and me. Lena will always take care of us. She's a good girl." The silence in the room was now thick enough to cut with a knife. Several guests looked horrified. My mother looked like she was about to faint. My father was staring, his face a mixture of confusion and dawning comprehension. "A good girl," I repeated, my voice laced with an icy bitterness I didn't know I could produce. "That's my role, isn't it? The unpaid, unacknowledged live-in carer, while the golden boy gets the inheritance and the free ride. You were so concerned I might be upset if I found out before the party. Well, consider me upset." I took a step forward. "For 3 years, I have given everything. My career, my savings, my youth, my future. And this is my reward? To be a permanent fixture, a piece of furniture in my brother's house, caring for the parents who so callously and secretly disinherited me in everything but responsibility. Tears were streaming down Mom's face now. Lena, please, we can talk about this. No, Mom, we can't, I said flatly, because there's nothing left to talk about. You made your choices. You showed me exactly what I'm worth to you. And you know what? I finally believe you. I looked at Mark. Congratulations on the house, little brother. I hope you're handy with a bedpan. Then I turned to the assembled guests. I apologize for disrupting your evening, but I felt you all deserve to know the kind of family you're celebrating tonight. As for me, I picked up my purse and a small suitcase I'd packed earlier and hidden near the door. I'm done. Lena, you can't just leave, Mom wailed, reaching for me. I sidestepped her. Watch me, I said. I have arranged for a professional caregiver service to begin tomorrow morning. They will be here at 8 a.m. I've paid for the first week. The invoice for ongoing services, along with all outstanding household bills and a detailed accounting of the money I've spent on this house and your care for the past 3 years, will be mailed to the new homeowner, Mark. I suggest you get a job, Mark, a real one this time. I walked towards the door. My Aunt Carol actually started to clap, then stopped, looking mortified, but also defiant. A few other people just stared, mouths agape. As for the party, I said, pausing at the threshold, happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. I hope you enjoy it. It's the last thing I'll ever do for you. And with that, I walked out. I didn't look back. I got into my car, which Chloe had kindly parked facing the street for a quick getaway, and drove away from that house, from that life, from that family, without a single tear. The rage had burned them all away, leaving behind a strange, hollow calm. The fallout, as you can imagine, was immediate and explosive. My phone started blowing up before I'd even reached the highway. Voicemails from Mom, hysterical and sobbing. Texts from Mark, alternating between threats and pathetic attempts at justification. It wasn't supposed to be like this. You weren't supposed to find out. Calls from various aunts and uncles, some sympathetic, most telling me I'd behaved appallingly, that I'd humiliated my parents, that I was selfish and cruel to abandon my sick father on their anniversary. I listened to a couple of the voicemails, read a few texts, then I pulled over, blocked every single one of their numbers, and then blocked them on all social media. I drove to Chloe's apartment. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and just hugged me. I think that's when I finally cried. Not for them, but for myself, for the years I'd lost, for the love I'd craved and never received. The next few days were a blur of finding a short-term rental, forwarding my mail, and dealing with the logistics of extracting myself from my former life. The care agency confirmed they had started, and that Mark had been less than cooperative. Apparently, he'd tried to dismiss them, saying I'd be back. They, very professionally, informed him they were contracted and paid for the week and would fulfill their duties until instructed otherwise by the person who paid them, me. The smear campaign began almost immediately. According to distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years who suddenly felt the need to message me on obscure platforms, I was a cold-hearted monster. I had staged a public tantrum, ruined a sacred celebration, and abandoned my vulnerable parents out of pure spite and jealousy over a house. My mother apparently took to her bed, grief-stricken by my cruelty. Mark was telling everyone I was mentally unstable and that he was scrambling to pick up the pieces of the mess I'd made. The anger had subsided a bit by then, replaced by a profound weariness, but also a growing sense of freedom. It was terrifying. For the first time in my adult life, I had no obligations to them. No guilt trips to endure, no passive-aggressive comments to dissect, no financial black hole to pour my earnings into. About 2 weeks after the party, I received a registered letter. It was from a lawyer representing my parents, demanding I cease my slanderous campaign. What campaign? I hadn't spoken to anyone but Chloe and the care agency, and return all family property in my possession, which I assumed meant the few sentimental items I'd taken, like my grandmother's locket and my childhood photo albums. It also hinted at them considering legal action to recoup the costs of my abandonment of my father's care, which was rich considering the circumstances. I hired my own lawyer. She drafted a polite but firm response outlining my 3 years of unpaid care, the financial contributions I'd made, I'd kept surprisingly good records, thank God, and a counterclaim for repayment of those expenses, plus emotional distress. We also pointed out that since Mark was the new homeowner, all responsibilities, financial and otherwise, relating to the property and its occupants, were now his. They never responded to that letter. It's been 3 months now. I found a small apartment in a city about 2 hours away. I'm temping, trying to figure out how to rebuild my career. It's daunting. Sometimes late at night, the loneliness hits. The grief for the family I thought I had, or at least the family I kept hoping they would become. I wonder if Dad is okay. That's the hardest part. I loved him, and I know in his way, he loved me. But he always let Mom and Mark dictate the family narrative. He was a passive participant in my erasure. Chloe has been my rock. She visits, calls, texts, reminds me that I did the right thing, that I chose myself, finally. A couple of my aunts, my mother's sisters, actually reached out privately. They said they'd always seen the dynamic, felt bad for me but didn't want to interfere. They told me Mom was a mess, but more angry than sad, and that Mark was completely overwhelmed and already complaining about the cost of everything. Apparently, he's trying to get a second mortgage on the house to cover expenses, which, given his financial track record, is probably not going well. Karma, I suppose, is a patient beast. I sent one final formal invoice to Mark for the funds I had expended on the house and my parents' care over the 3 years, meticulously itemized, totaling a little over $45,000, not including lost wages. My lawyer advised it, more as a statement than with any real expectation of getting it back. I haven't heard anything. I don't expect to. The real payment was my freedom. Sometimes I still question myself. Was I too harsh? Could I have handled it differently? Some of the flying monkeys who still managed to get messages through to me via obscure relatives say I should have had a private conversation, that I tore the family apart publicly. But they weren't there for the years of private conversations where I was dismissed, gaslighted, and taken for granted. They didn't see me sacrificing my life while my brother was handed everything on a silver platter. The betrayal wasn't private. It was a fundamental ongoing reality of my life, culminating in a secret, final act of devastating unfairness. My response, I feel, matched the scale of the betrayal. I'm starting therapy next week. There's a lot to unpack. The feeling of being the good girl is a hard one to shake, even when you know it was just a label used to exploit you. I'm working on building a life where I decide what's good for me, not what makes me good in the eyes of people who never truly saw me anyway. So Reddit, after all this, after laying out my heart and my hurt and my one explosive act of self-preservation, Ada, was I wrong to blow up my parents' anniversary party and walk away from my family like that? Part of me feels so liberated, but there's this nagging, little voice conditioned by years of guilt that wonders if I went too far. What would you have done? Is there a right way to react when you discover your entire life of sacrifice was built on a foundation of lies and manipulation, designed to benefit everyone but you? I'm just trying to figure out how to live with the choices I've made, and the choices they forced me to make.